Jordan Schnitzer is an American visionary and philanthropist, and is the most enthusiastic and prominent print collector in America. And his mission is to bring the art of printmaking to thousands of people, young and old, through his extraordinary family foundation. His collection of over 15,000 prints includes the most significant and influential artists of the 20th and 21st centuries, and audiences throughout the United States, particularly those in smaller cities, have had the opportunity to view original prints created by 1,500 leading American artists. And today at the Print Fair, he will have a conversation with the fabulous Leonardo Drew. The foundation was founded in 1997 as a nonprofit organization to manage the collections of Jordan Schnitzer and his family foundation, and to provide supplemental funding for education and outreach in conjunction with the exhibits. And he publishes also very scholarly texts. Since the program's inception, the foundation has organized over 180 exhibitions and has exhibited works at 120 museums, including most recently an Andy Warhol exhibition in my hometown of Dublin, Ireland, at the Hugh Lane Municipal Gallery of Modern Art. Jordan is passionate about art education. Sometimes at the opening of an exhibition, he can be found in the line queuing up where people are queuing up to see the exhibit, and he is asking them why they're there and what they will see, and he is so enthusiastic, and he's not mixing around with the people who have organized bits and pieces here and there. His enthusiasm is infectious. He is passionate, as I said, about art education. His scholarly and in-depth research has not only included blue-chip artists, but has also highlighted the work of women artists, Native American artists, and African American artists. His contributions will go down in the history of printmaking. This afternoon, Jordan will talk with Leonardo Drew about his art and that of his friends in this stunning exhibition, which is presented by Jordan Schnitzer and his family foundation for the IFPDA. Jordan.
Okay. Why don't you stay up here for 1 second? No, stay. Before I sit down, the good news is that was the shortest introduction she's ever done of me, even though I've complained to her, But Paula Pachenko, for those of you that don't know, and I'm sure all of you here know, has run Tandem Press at the University of Wisconsin-Madison for 33 years. And it is one of the outstanding publishers in this country of amazing artists. She, like others, like Sid Felsen, who were honoring at the Getty on Monday night, had an unbelievable eye to just pick these artists and then transforms their work with the fabulous studio they have in Madison. And so she's retiring. She talked to me about it early in January. It will be announced next week by the university. But I think all of us in this room, out here, and across the country owe such a great debt to you for what you've done with amazing artists and getting their work to all of us. So to you, Paula.
Thank you so much.
And her husband, Russell, retired as the director of the Chazen Museum on the university campus, which is a stunning museum. And I know that there'll be a lot more chapters in your life in the art world. And really, you've done so much for everyone, including our collection. We buy everything they do, because how can you not? Because it's all such spectacular work. So again, thank you. Okay, now we've used up all our time. We're done. So Leonardo Drew, let's first let me talk about how we met. Years ago, Dick Solomon, where are you, right back there, a legend in the art world, called up when he was president of the IFPDA and asked whether we would fund a yearly lecture series, which we did for about 15 years. And after a couple, Kiki Smith and some other, Mel Bachner, others, he said, hey, here's an idea for you, a guy named Leonardo Drew. Do you know his work? I said, no. He sent me some images, and I was blown away. And that was nothing compared to the first time we met when he did the talk years ago. And like you'll see today, the wit, the charm, the personality, the good looks, the amazing artist that he is, and we've become such close friends, and I can't stop just being taken away on a journey every time I look at all the work you do. So let's start off a little bit, because I like to always talk about who the person is behind the work. And you were born in 1961 in Tallahassee, then moved to Bridgeport, Connecticut. Your mom raised, there were 5 of you,
That's
right?
correct, yeah.
5 kids?
5 dudes.
All went to school. She was a tough taskmaster. You lived across from a city dump. That
True story.
begins to start forming. And then you early on got into art and became quite a draftsman.
That's correct.
And when you were 13, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and Heavy Metal Magazine wanted to hire you to work full-time, but you happened to see some Jackson Pollock reproductions, and that changed your world. So let's go back in time, and where did the art come from? Well, first, what was it like growing up there in those early years with all those kids, and your mom had a lot of jobs to put food on the table?
Well, I'll tell you, a name like Leonardo, you would think things would be easy. Or growing up in the hood, the name like Leonardo, you just get beat up. You know, so it's just the truth of the matter. So I have to navigate this name first, you know, until I got into like the 2nd grade, and the nuns informed me of who Leonardo da Vinci was. And I would say, wait a minute, there's another Leonardo? I mean, I couldn't imagine that anyone could be named this horrific name, you know, and my mother takes full credit for naming me. I know this is not true. I mean, to this day, she'll still lie to you and say she named me the stars and all that. And it's like, no, that is not the truth. My father, who she threw out when maybe I was 6 or 7, you know, his name was Leon. And he was an artist. And you can only imagine, you know, without my mother, you know, at the block, that he named me. You know, Leon to Leonardo is a no-brainer. And you're an artist. My mother didn't know who Leonardo da Vinci was. And the nuns knew, but, you know, I just knew it was a name that's going to get me beat up. So I survived that. You know, in terms of, you know, like DC and Marvel finding me, that had everything to do with the fact that all those guys who worked with those comics had homes in Westport, Connecticut. I lived in Bridgeport, which is in the projects, and far removed from anything having to do with, you know, I was a natural, you know, born artist, so I was making things. Had facility, sculpting, and also able to draw. And they started exhibiting my work actually in the Westport area. Those guys got hip to me, and that was how that all got started. It took some time, some years later, as I was growing, I think the Superman movie was out then. That would have been 1977 with Christopher Reeve. And DC was using that as a bargaining chip because for some time they've been trying to sort of get me to sort of say, okay, you're going to go with Marvel, you go with DC, you know? And they said, well, we got this Superman movie out, you know? And Marvel, you know, they don't have anything, you know? And it's like, you should work with us. But I saw Jackson Pollock, actually in black and white in the library, and in a small book. And it was on all the modernists. It was Motherwell, Jackson Pollock, but Pollock, and even in black and white, resonated. And I was like, this is where I need to park it. You know, this is what it's about. So sometime later, it was like, you know, I started to sort of realize that if I was going to, there was a door that I need to go through. And if I was going to go through that door, I had need to go through him. Jackson Pollock, and then Picasso. Picasso came to the MoMA, visited that, and that took the top off. And this is why we're sitting here now. So
So you applied to Pratt,
No, Parsons.
Parsons rather, and we were talking because there's someone here who was on that admissions committee.
Mary Sabatino.
That's right. That's right. We were talking. And you said when you saw his work, you ran to the director and said, look at this. This is amazing. And you started there at Parsons. Mm-hmm. But then you transferred to Cooper Union.
Yeah, well, I had heard that there's this phenomenal school. You want to hook me in?
Yeah, brother, you moved it.
Oh, did I? Oh, my son, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you unzip.
Can you guys hear me? I got a big mouth.
Did you miss that first 10 minutes there? We can hit the button and repeat it.
Put it on this side.
Oh, okay.
So that way.
Well, even I can hear me. Okay. So I went. Where was I? What was I saying?
So you were at Parsons and you heard about Jack
Okay.
Whitten.
No. I heard about Cooper Union, and now what ended up happening was that there was another instructor, Ted Zapkis, who would ride me when I was at Parsons. He said he would ask the other students and say, they like, oh, okay, which one of these works is Leonardo during a crit? And all the kids would go like, well, yeah, they would know my work. And he said, why do you know it's Leonardo's work? And they would say, well, it seems to be more advanced. And he said, seems to be. And I said, I get it, you know. It's like, I'm not going to learn anything here, you know. I need to move. And that was when I heard about Cooper Union and its history. And, of course, when I got there, I mean, they had these fantastic instructors, Jack Whitten being one of them. And, I mean, as a black man to a black man, it was like, he just informed me right away that, you know, this is where you're going to end up parking it, man. It's like, there's nothing for us here, but we're going to be teaching, and I'm going to teach you as much as I can. And he embraced me, pretty much was a mentor father for my time there. And it was just a phenomenal relationship. And as I had sort of started realizing or finding my voice, because that facility was something else. Meaning I have to sort of figure out how to sort of get through, you know, how not to use my hands, you know. So figuring that I need to tie my hands in order sort of like to make that leap, you know, I said, okay, no more drawing, no more painting, you know, like all the things that came easy to you, you're not going to be doing that anymore. Mm-hmm. And you need to sort of like find another way to create. I mean, if you had seen Jackson Pollock, you know that there are other levels of this, you know, of being creative. And it's been this dance ever since. I mean, really, I'm still, you know, like when I get comfortable, and Ruth and Kimmy will tell you, it's like, hey, you know, like it's time to switch up. We got like there are other, you know, obstacles you need to put in your way in order so you can get off your ass so you can actually make serious art. So whether or not that's a positive when it comes to actually in the art world, I think they want you to have a signature. And I'm always sort of like challenging, you know, myself so that I can actually continue to sort of find new iterations of what's possible, you know.
So 2 more points before we get on to your art. So you went with Jack to Europe in 19...
Well, I mean, he had a place in Greece. And from 1990 to 1999, I would visit him there. And it was, yeah, just... It was my first forays into Europe, and we were as far out as you can imagine on the island of Crete in a place called Galeni. And so, you know, he invited me the first time around, and it was like I fell in love with Galeni, and it was like, okay, I would go and visit them like every summer for like 9 years. So, and interesting enough, he was doing sculptures there, and he was hiding them there because he felt that they were... would interrupt or get in the way of his trajectory. I think now it seems that like it's all pulled together and it's all understood as one language. And but it was interesting watching him go through this kind of navigate this kind of how do I realize you know my best ends as an artist, you know. And he was always challenging that too. So in that way, he was very inspirational, you know.
So after you graduated, you started also teaching.
No, I didn't teach.
You didn't?
No. Who told you that?
But then
I don't know that the teaching. Listen, the idea of teaching, I think, is fantastic. I just never could sit still long enough to sort of like teach anybody anything. But it's been this kind of like I said, this ongoing sort of push, and I'm always trying to figure out how to sort of like make ends meet so that I can actually buy art material and continue to make things. But it was never geared towards sort of like parking, like what Jack said about teaching. I kind of felt that there were other ways to sort of make it happen. It wasn't like I needed to sort of go on welfare in order to sort of like to make money and then and then make my work. It was you need to sort of become inventive and ingenious at how to sort of so you can have 24/7 of you. I did work at Christie's for like a year and a half, Christie's East, and saved enough money to take time off, and I never looked back from there.
So, do you have images of your earliest work here?
Yeah.
Is there some here? Let's talk about
sure.
that.
Let's go.
I want to get to 1992 in a second, but
You mean like the drawings?
whatever you want to show us about your early work.
Now, these are the prints, and I think it probably would have been better to go forward. Sorry, guys. But if we're going in order, I mean, obviously these are the prints, but this is early me.
Okay.
And of all things, I remember the photographer when he took this, he was laughing. I had no idea why he was laughing, but the very idea that in the projects, you're going to do this life-size Captain America, obviously this is a political statement. I didn't even understand that at 13, but here are some of the early illustrations. And this was, like, how would I say, this was like where I decided that, okay, no more drawing, and I said no more painting, so that meant no more colors. So you can only use black. And from that point, that led me, these cut paper shapes led me to realize these sculptures in black. A friend who would go hunting in the Hamptons in a place called Heather Hills, took me out and we dug around in the quicksand and dug out like skeletons, deer skeletons and other critters. And you can kind of see them. If you look close enough, see a jawbone in that piece there. And in this piece, this is full of dead things. But I own that piece because at the time, nobody wanted to own it, So I actually ended up, this is the mother piece of all of my works. It's called Number 8. It was created in 1988. And like I said, if you look close enough, you can kind of see bird wings and crazy stuff. But it did allow me to find my voice. So if you look, say like this piece, and you follow the trajectory, this is number 8. Now, if I started with number 8, that means that, what became of 1 through 7, they actually are number 8. So if people say I cannibalize my work, that means, you take things apart in order to sort of make the next iteration. Absolutely true.
So let's ask, you number all your work. Why?
Because the viewers should be allowed to have their full-on experience without you getting in the way. So you get your ass out of the way, let them see. The work is a mirror. You find yourself in it,
Okay, 1992, you and some other artists were asked to go to the Dakar Biennial. You went there with a few other artists. That seemed to be a significant point in your life with your work.
Well, I guess actually a black individual going to Africa, we always say going home, even though we've never been. It has everything to do, obviously, with the history. I mean, you're stripped away from the motherland, and you have the opportunity to sort of go back and say it's going home. So any parts of Africa, that is, because we never really knew exactly where we were taken from. So as I ended up in Dakar, they have the Gori Island, which is like the catacombs, where slaves were kept in these dungeons before they were put on the ships. And I'm telling you, it was horrific. And just standing there, you can just feel the weight of that experience. What I came away with, and I don't ever really talk about the works per se in terms of, okay, this is where that came from. That piece right there, number 43, absolutely are those catacombs. The tightness of those boxes, the claustrophobic aspect of them, the monstrous weight, emotional weight, absolutely that experience, Everybody in here knows that. Nobody else knows about that. Don't tell anybody that's what that piece is. But all in all, I'm finding as I'm navigating through this life, travel, is an absolute. Something that continues to nourish, give, in terms of experiences, material, and just the sheer, collectiveness of us. Like our own, our experiences all together. I am not this sort of like single individual, separate from. No, I'm actually a part of all of these things. So as an antenna or a receiver of information, it's like you put yourself out there, you receive that information, and then you have the opportunity to give it back. And that's where the art comes in. If I was a musician, I will be playing about it. If I was a writer, I'll be writing about it. But as an artist, you have no choice but to actually, make emotions material,
So you've talked before when I've asked you, do you plan your art out? I remember Ellsworth Kelly, you'd see his desk and he had all these mathematical calculations before he'd do his work, Roy Lichtenstein, others. But what you've told me is you love to travel and you love to go places and just sort of absorb the surroundings and nature, and then you go back in your studio and you just start working.
Yeah, but it's never specific, though. I mean, if you're receiving that information, I don't think you necessarily have to be specific about, like saying this piece is actually going to be about that experience. It's not realized that way. It's a full-on, digestion, and then at some point, that information will find its way. It could be years before it comes out. Like I said, like what happened in Glory Island, and from that experience, it took really something like two and a half years to sort of like all of a sudden reveal itself.
Process it.
And like just recently, I mean, this photo here shows Machu Picchu. Around that very same time, I spent like 4 years going back and forth to mainland China in a place called Zhengzhou, where they're creating these. It's at ground zero for porcelain. So they're creating these gigantic vases, and I go there, and with the idea, there's a image of Zhengzhou, the vases. They're like the kilns there are like 25 feet tall. So you can only imagine not doing large scale works. This is the place where you want to plant yourself. But from that experience, I came in with color. Color was really not a part of, I mean, if you go through the trajectory of my work, had not been introduced really until I started doing printing, and then all of a sudden it came full on after the China experience, Interesting also that they have this history of craft, and I'm there actually trying to make serious work, so I'm smashing these vases, and they're throwing it out as I'm like, smashing them. Just like I said, no, this is not garbage. This is actual art, And it only took them 2 seconds to figure out, like, oh, art. Okay, this is money. So so sometime later, a friend of mine called me and said, Leonardo, don't be upset. I was in Shanghai and I saw your work hanging in a clothing store. Now I didn't make that work. But it so happens that, it's Wild West there. So you make something there. If you're an artist, you make something there, they're bound to sort of like use it in some way. And I didn't feel like I was ripped off because look what I came away with,
So in your studio in Brooklyn, and now you have in San Antonio, you've been going there since '92, and you now have a house there and a studio there. But in Brooklyn, how many works are you working on at any one time? If we all walked in your studio, what would we see?
Well, I call it 7 crying babies. So I'm rotating usually because, like in order to sort of keep yourself going, I need to sort of like at least have the, my attention on 7 things. So rotating those things, they assist each other in actually completing themselves also. So if I'm having a hard time with this one, I can move on to this one over here, and it will tell me what this one over here needs, So, and they rotate, and they leave, and then you go on to the next rotation. So it's just a method for, challenging yourself and keeping you sort of like in the game, and asking questions. I think that the idea of or say like the threat of actually making something good, that always has to be there. There's no way that you should find yourself, gazing or not doing, and I'm just ongoing.
So go to one of the explosion pieces or something.
Just pass them.
So with a work like this, when do you know it's done?
That's an interesting question. Actually, sadly, my works are never done.
That means I want a refund.
No. You speak to any of my galleries, they'll know that if I, have the opportunity to get something back, that it will, be turned into something else. And there's always this idea that this work is, there's layers, there's layers of experiences. So if you're sort of embedding these things, like the first hit with something, if it's not working out, the more you sort of have this kind of turnaround of that material, the stronger it's going to become. It's like life experiences are actually embedded in that material. So, we can talk about your works and whether or not they're finished. I can definitely finish them for you.
Let's go to some of the amazing stuff. Can you show the stuff at Crown Point Press? I want to talk about Crown Point Press and then working at Pace and talk about the prints and the relationship with printers and so forth. So let's go to Crown Point Press first and the amazing.
Crown Point?
Yeah.
We're on Pace prints now, but you want to go to Crown Point.
You start with the Crown Point stuff for a second there, and then we'll come back to the amazing work at Pace.
Okay, here's Crown Point.
So, Catherine Brown, as many of you know, finished school, went to Scotland, and saw a press in the mud and asked the proprietor what was happening with that. He said, sorry, it was supposed to be picked up by the junkman. And she said, can I buy it? He said, you can have it. She exchanged her airfare parents gave her from graduation to bring the press back to Berkeley. And she invited some friends like Diebenkorn and a few others to come play. Amazing woman and a hero of mine. So tell me how you arrived at Crown Point, what that was like working there with the team there.
Well, interesting. The fact that I had already had the opportunity to work with the most amazing printmakers over at Pace Prints opened me up to other possibilities. Always asking questions. So the lead-in to working with Catherine and Valerie over at Crown Point, was just a no-brainer. It was flowing. I think it's even evident in the work if you compare it to, the more sculptural works that were done over at Pace Prints. It's funny. Sometimes I'm moving at light speed, so looking backwards, it's always kind of like, okay, wow, what was I thinking? How did that happen? It's not like I have all the answers. I can only tell you that I'm living these things, and that's probably the best way I can actually describe what it feels like to make. There's pain, yeah, absolutely. Even now, I know that I, have to have, two new knees, hands worked on. Everything is falling apart now, but it has everything to do with this, this ongoing athleticism that happens in the work. For eons, I was doing all of it just me on the table saw, 16 hours, beating it, and now, I'm learning to collaborate. Ruth and Akemi sitting in the front here, my sisters, killers from Pace Prints, and they definitely met me in ways that, how do I describe it? They never said no, and that's key in all of this because I'm pushing, and if you're pushing with me, I think we can achieve something. And whenever I ask, the impossible, they bent over backwards to realize it. So, And that just bled over into working with Crown Point. It was just, once you have that kind of relationship, you're yearning for that to actually happen in other places, that kind of collaboration.
Let's now go to the paste prints and show a few of those works for a second.
Okay, let's start from, there's a whole bunch of them, but I'm going to.
Pick anyone you want to talk about.
Anyone I want to talk about, okay. I'll talk about all of them.
Like the big silver one or the...
yeah, I'm looking for that silver one, but because that was the most pain in the ass one. I think that to this day there's still silver. The studio's still silver, right? I don't think you guys ever cleaned it up, but it's an experience, Mm-hmm.
So talk about that dynamic and the collaboration. You'll notice on this exhibition, I had on the notes both the publisher and the printer, because for me, part of the excitement of the works on paper and so forth is that magic collaboration. And for the printers that have the time to push technologically the work allows the artist, and couldn't have a better example than what we see in the room right over there. I mean, these works are just beyond comprehension how you created them. So thank you, Dick and Ruth, and everybody, amazing. But so what's it like? Tell what it's like. You're used to working yourself and so forth, and then you suddenly team of people there to support you.
I don't think they're. I was just thinking of my first real collaboration was with Merce Cunningham. That would have been in '96. And interesting enough, he called me, and I had no idea who he was. And he said, would you be interested in doing something with me? And I had to call around to find out who this guy was, And interesting that he has a system for creating, which I also adapted. Now that happens also with Ruth and Kimmy. The colors, the kind of things, the kind of materials that they introduce have now also become a part of my language, my vocabulary. What Merce was doing, he would create the phrasing or the choreography separate from me. He allowed me to do my thing. The musician did his thing, all separate from one another. All those elements came together opening night, and he just let the chips fall where they may. And I said, what if it's like, and he said, it's happening, baby, And I said, you know what? I need to have that kind of dare in my work, And once you sort of had that kind of experience with a master in terms of collaborating and also how to sort of actually make that happen, it gave me full, how would I say, confidence. And when I came in to work with them, it's like I was already set,
So tell us how's this happen? How do you create this?
We should have them up here. I mean, really. I mean, we're talking, these guys are masters. So it's like, okay, I'm coming in with bits and pieces and some ideas, and we start talking. And at this point, we have a shorthand for it's not, Ruth complains that I'm not there enough to sort of I say, we can use our shorthand to make things now, We have a way of talking to each other and knowing that, okay, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of just understanding how to mold this thing or guide this thing. Once it starts to live, you have to sort of continue to sort of beat experiences into the material. In the same way that I do that with the works in the studio, it's the same thing with the actual objects. It's like when we were working together, it was just, we just had an understanding of what that language was and what we were after,
Do you think working and creating the prints and multiples helps you become better with the unique works? Or does the unique work experience help you become better creating the multiple works?
It's definitely it has poisoned me because my gallery would tell you, there can be multiples of certain works, So that definitely comes from my experiences with them. So that was not a happening thing before. So is that right? Is that true, Mary? When you say that's true. But it's a fact that, they're sister works to other works now. Yeah, that does happen. Yeah. So editions.
Yeah. So as you know, I've sponsored these lectures for a number of years, and talking with Jenny Gibbs, the director, there she is, suggested maybe doing something different this year, of actually taking a booth out and having an exhibition. And I thought of you because first I figured you'd be accessible and be here, and because you work so hard. I go to bed West Coast time about 12:30, so I'm reading the papers around 11:30, and I'll pick up the phone and call him. He
4 o'clock in the morning.
He always answers. Always working. He works so hard. Okay? But I thought it also was important because I wanted to show an artist that did unique works and yet did magnificent prints and multiples, to break down these barriers that, And then I also asked you, I thought it'd be interesting to tell us about some other artists that have influenced you and that you respect and learn from or whatever. And you picked Robert Rauschenberg and Julie Mahertu and Matthew Day Jackson and Hank Willis Thomas. Let's talk about those artists for a second. And what do you experience when you look at their work, or how have they influenced you, or tell us about the relationship with them, either personally or art-wise, or what. So start off with Robert Rauschenberg.
I mean, if we're even think of the group, and we talk about influence. Rauschenberg, I think that I'm older than Rauschenberg, so no, he's older than me. But I think that in the end, as I'm looking at, say, like Jackson Pollock, it just makes sense to sort of also realize the nuances of the language. Rauschenberg is that. The kind of materials that I use obviously are very close to Rauschenberg. But if you were to look at this piece here, that's the Jackson Pollock sculpted. That's an understanding of Pollock, but in a sculpture form. So as I'm sort of navigating through this sort of life, it's always interesting to sort of find kindred spirits, other artists who are also on their journeys. And I know them when I see them, we're not all like, there are different levels of these experiences, but some of us are over the top committed to digging, research, and asking questions. So the artists that I selected, they're all are about that, an understanding of history, and also that understanding that they're standing on the shoulders of artists before, and the other three artists, Julie and Matthew and Hank, absolutely very different from each other, but on very, very serious journeys. Just love their work.
Legacy. You've got a number of awards, shows all over museums and so forth. Do you think about legacy? And
no, not really. No, I think that I have very close friends who continue to sort of beat me about that, and that I should consider more deeply what this means in terms of when you're no longer here and all that. I'm thinking about right now, I'm above ground, I'm pushing, and I want to continue to sort of to be a super additive, and not think so much about like so ego-driven, this idea of sometimes creating that you can get locked into this idea that it's all about me. I like the idea that we're adding to a larger language, and that I continue to sort of glean from, moving around and exploring and touching and speaking to, other folks who are on their journeys too.
The Washington Park, the big thing you did 2 years ago.
Madison Square Park.
Madison Square Park, the big outdoor thing. Can you get that on the screen real quick?
Sure.
I don't know how many of you saw that, but it was a huge, big. Kids were climbing all over it, and
oh yeah, and that's the interesting thing, that when Brooke Rappaport approached me about doing something outside, I had never done outdoor sculpture, and I knew my materials was really, they're not about outdoors, that's for sure. They're not, they're perishable. I'm saying it's funny outside. So the idea that that you can do something that that could survive long enough was one thing. But to have this now super additive of people actually completing the work by putting their bodies in the act of feeling it, you know, and attaching themselves to it. I mean, they couldn't help but like climb on this thing, even though the signs were saying, "Do not climb." You know, they were all over it. So I think that this is something new that was absolutely added to how I would like to sort of like create something permanent that could have that very same sort of resonance.
If you could wave a wand and have your work at any museum in the world, what museum would you want your work to be, and what kind of work would you want to be in that exhibition? And that's a pretty good question.
That's a Jordan question.
Yeah.
That's not a Leonardo question. That's a Jordan question.
I mean, I know where I want your work to go, but
I have to go like, what?
do you wish your work was at X or X or X and whatever? But
Boy, I wish that my ego was more. I think that in a lot of ways, if I was more that kind of person, the work would look a whole lot different. Absolutely. So, meaning I would probably have a signature. I park it here, and I would say, "This is who I am. I'm staking my claim," and now all I have to do is navigate all these museums. These things are kind of happening mostly like. Even when I was a kid, they always came and got me, I mean, when I was a kid, Marvel Comics and DC Comics, I wasn't looking for them. They came and got me. So it's always been, they coming to get you, It's not like I had to say, I, need to be doing this in order to sort of get this, But if I had that strategy, I would be making different work. Does that make sense?
a fascinating answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two more things real quick, then some questions from the audience. The latest thing we bought from you is that big, huge cotton. Did you have an image of it on here? No?
We have the Rebels. I don't know if you want to pull that one up. The cotton, there's a cotton wall piece, but it's not yours.
Thanks a lot.
We'll pull it up anyway. What do you want to ask about the cotton piece?
So he did a giant cotton piece that's about 6-8 feet tall and huge. And, we said, Jordan, this is an important piece I want in your collection. It's going to be exhibited in California.
Yeah, something called the Monuments Exhibition, which interesting premise, which is to have these fallen Confederate monuments that they've been taking down up against artists, I guess, like myself and Kara Walker, and I don't know who the other are. A lot of artists in that show, but I hope they get it off the ground. But it's a great idea. It's a great idea, but
okay,
that's there. Yeah.
Okay, so talk about this piece and that piece and what's going on there with the cotton and
That's me pushing it. That's me pushing it down Broadway to Jack Whitten's studio. 30 blocks. Now, this is the story. It's a true story, but this is I didn't know how to drive. Jack lent me his studio, which is on Lisbonard, and the upholstery district is like around 26th Street or something like that. So it was the best way to get it there was to push it on a dolly. But we're talking like at least 20-something times, in order to make this piece. All this, I think there's a photo hopefully there's a photo of me making in Jack's studio, but maybe not. Shucks. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, that photo does exist in the book. You can get it on Amazon. But it's definitely, it tells a story. Someone was smart enough, because I didn't actually set that photo up. Someone knew that I was doing this back and forth, and even the way I was dressed, it was like working in the fields, but it was just so hot, So, I had to dress that way. So he asked me if it was okay to take that photo. So he got up on top of this, it's the building, and he shot it. And, there are like 4 or 5 different shots, all in the book. But but I think it's interesting that these kind of things are continue to sort of happen, correct or right moments that are captured, without me instigating it, And that was Merce Cunningham, by the way, yeah.
You have some works that are very powerful in terms of my interpretation of the African-American experience. Mm-hmm. And then you have other works that go all over the place in terms of the.
There's a reason for that, though, Jordan. I mean, the cotton piece, that was like back in 92, the Red Waxing exhibition. There are a number of works that would harken back to, my ancestors, obviously cotton. The other works, actually, let's see. The other works that were in that exhibition is this one here. The Metropolitan Museum has that one, yep. And that one you own, right? But these are all were in that exhibition. There are other works, and I'm sorry that we don't have all of them here, but I also just noticed something else, that this piece, when I was talking about cannibalism, this piece is this piece. That's what happens. So like all those boxes, they're like maybe 1,200 boxes, and I got this piece back and I transformed it into this. But
Wow.
but what were we talking about?
Well, I think the tension between the work that focuses on that African American experience versus other stuff
that I got it out of the way. That in '92, it was like, okay, that's it. You don't have to sort of keep beating this. You needed to go through this, but you don't need to sort of have this be your signature, so to speak. Now, there are artists, who do magnificent works consistently on the subject. Kara's one of them.
Sure.
Hank. It's a list of artists who doing powerful work consistently. I'm not downplaying them. I'm just saying that that's not that's not my journey. In '92, I did that piece. Did a reapproach for the piece that you ended up getting on that cotton wall, because they wanted this cotton wall for the Confederate statue situation, and but something that I wouldn't continue to sort of visit. It's not necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we ask for a few questions from the audience, what do you want to ask me? Okay.
That's a good question. Wait a minute. No. Because there's a ton of questions I got for you, man. Well, where to start, though? But I never had the opportunity to meet your mother. And meeting other folks, speak about her and her legacy and the artists that she brought into play, Cole Scott and all these others, it's like, wow. What was it? You're the only child. So just curious, I didn't have the opportunity to meet her, but what was it like growing up with that kind of heritage? I mean, with that kind of a person who's a digger,
I think it's interesting. My mother died 4 years ago this April at 91. And it's interesting that, your mother played the prominent role in your life. And when you've talked more about your siblings and how professional they are and what they're doing and how she works hard with 2-3 jobs to put food on the table and push you, and she created that expectation for you to make a difference. And I think I grew up with both parents doing that. Over the years, I remember we'd become much more successful later in years. Lincoln High School in Portland had a writers speaker series and asked me to come talk, and they said, it's like 8 years ago, they said, what was it like growing up in this wealthy, politically influential family? I said, wait a second, folks. I remember in grade school, my father had started the real estate business, had left his brothers that were following the scrap business my immigrant grandfather from Ukraine started in 1905 when he came here. I said, in high school, I remember Sunday nights, my mother would do the bills, and she'd say, gee, Harold, I need X amount of money. He'd say, honey, I don't have that much cash, and she'd stretch out the bills. And there are lots of things that shape and form all of us as young people. And generally our parents are the ones we're most observant of and so forth. But she was gutsy when she went to the Portland Art Museum Art School when I went to first grade, and then opened a gallery, the first contemporary art gallery in Portland for Pacific Northwest artists. It was really a magical time for me, being babysat by artists. They were 18, 19, she was 30, going to the gallery openings every month. So the art was just a natural thing for me. As you know, I bought my first piece myself when I was 14. As I've said, I paid $60, $5 a month out of my allowance. And if I missed a payment, my mother knew where to foreclose since my bedroom was next to hers. Okay, and I have it right there by Louis Bunce, a little study right now. So I think I owe the art door opening for me from her. And I think we see our parents as we're older, especially as we're older, in a different light than growing up, But she was pretty gutsy to be a woman business lady in a time when there weren't a lot of women with businesses. And, She helped a lot of people realize the importance of supporting local artists, of having art in their homes and businesses, and I've fallen into that same pattern. I think she'd be very proud of what I've done since. She said sometimes, a lot of her friends who had interests in various things, their kids had no interest in the things the parents had. Obviously, each child has a right to go in any direction they want. But obviously, I run our real estate business, which I love, and the art world and lots of philanthropy. But she's a pretty amazing woman looking back, the energy she had. She had a gallery, a design business, 2 TV shows she was on, whatever. So I never knew a time when my parents weren't getting up and making a difference. They went through their ups and downs and had lots of issues over the years, like every couple and every individual. I remember when I finished law school and started working. I started working when I was 14. I was a janitor, painter, and I started working in the office when I was 17 in the summers. And I remember getting out of law school and starting to work, and I had the normal problems, girlfriend, dad issues at work, whatever, and I thought if I just solve those problems, everything will be hunky-dory like it was supposed to be for all of us, right? Okay, and suddenly a few more problems came, and I realized, hey, what kind of thing is this? And I realized, life's going to be a series of problems, but get up every day, put one foot ahead of the next, and see and try to do the best you can with whatever you're doing. But she was quite an influence, and I appreciate your asking. But with that, let's ask some questions, the remaining 10 minutes from the audience, or 7, 8 minutes. Sir. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. First of all, congratulations on the gifts that you were given from the beginning. 2 influences that have influenced my art, and I'm looking at this, Louise Nevelson and Joseph Cornell. Could you speak a little bit about that? And lastly, your work is such scale, so large, and you were fortunate to have space to do it in. How do you think your art would have been if you had small space to work?
Oh, no, listen, brother. The space was this big. And my pieces are in increments that are like this, that come together. They leave this, which was an apartment in Washington Heights, and I was sleeping in the bathtub. So it's like, okay, so you take all the rooms were showrooms, and when the time came to someone said, oh, this is guy making this stuff up, in Washington Heights, go check him out. And they dragged me out, took these little compartments or whatever, put them together, make big pieces. All the works are made that way. They're not these gigantic pieces. And interesting enough, these little sections or whatever, you can take them and, put them in this one or put them in that one. So it continues to sort of feed into the ideology of making, and how to puzzle fit life experiences, like literally concrete life experiences, into each other. So I have works that are from different periods that are, stored away in the studio, bits and pieces of them that come together at times to create actual new works, So no, it's not about space. It's not about the space. It's how you navigate the space. And I think each artist, if I were to talk to or mentor artists, I will always start with that one. Do not allow your space to dictate how you realize, how you want to sort of make, you need to sort of become, ingeniously come up with some ideas on how to make the work that you were born to make,
The townhouse in Brooklyn is about maybe, 40 feet wide? Okay, and it's so much fun, tall ceiling. I take my little boys there, he puts them on the concrete floor, gets all this wood and hammers, and they start busting things, and then he has a lift, up and down. So much fun. Speaking of that, do you have one of the big explosion? Do you have the big explosion series on this? The big explosion, the bigger one? Mm-hmm. Or one of those big ones?
We was also asking about Louise Nevelson.
Oh, I'm sorry, finish up, Louise.
But just, if you're in London at the Tate, they got us in a boxing match, So yeah. But it's a no-brainer. Every museum that owns my work, if they have a Nevelson, they put us together. So I get it, So I love her. She's magical and absolutely an honor to sort of be in a boxing match with Louise Nevelson, But explosion. Let's see.
So when I visit the studio, whichever time it was, 4 or 5 years ago, I saw this big piece on the wall he was working on, and I said, God, I want that, and it wasn't finished. And let's see if you see it here.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah, but I think that when
It's
it
in a
comes
show
to-
that's traveled to 5 museums. It's at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art at the University of Oregon in Eugene, and he's flying out on Tuesday, and we're going down Wednesday. He's giving a talk. But so the first time I actually saw this sort of big explosion piece, it was at the University of California at Santa Cruz. We had an exhibition there. We came down, and so I walked in to see it for the first time, the whole piece, because I just saw part of it in the studio, and there were like 1,000 little pieces on the floor in front of it, and a whole bunch of pieces on the side. And I said, "My God, I paid you for that, and I got all these other pieces for free." And little did I know, it takes a 40-foot van and 30 boxes to move it. It's a fortune to move it, and it takes a week to install. So little did I know, but it is an absolutely spectacular, breathtaking piece, and we're so lucky to have it. It looks more like this big one here.
Yeah.
Just
But
amazing.
Too bad we didn't interject
Thousands
that
of
one.
little pieces. I mean, So, questions? Another one? Yes, sir.
The title of the talk was about print. I'm sorry. The title of the talk was, I think, something along the line of paper into sculpture and sculpture into paper. So my question really has to do more with the notion of 3D prints. And I noticed that your work is incredible. I mean, it's very obvious. A lot of it has to do with it being a very pictorial nature. It depends on kind of a relief quality where there's a primary view and the work is attached to a wall. So, for example, with this particular piece with the cast branches, I'm really curious as to how you made that shift. Is it that you just decided, oh, I want to make a shell of paper of something that I've actually created or put on the wall? Or how did those come about?
Well, it was a natural evolution, but keep in mind also that when Dick Solomon approached me about working with paste prints, it was like the idea of actually doing something with the printmaking process that would lead itself into real sculpture, and I think from their perspective, it was like a no-brainer. It's like, oh, so get him to come in here, he's going to come up with something. It didn't take us long at all. Between Ruth and the